Welcome into another edition of Cuse's Corner. Kevin Syracuse with you here after the Buffalo Bills dropped their second game of the season, this time losing to the Houston Texans in heartbreaking fashion, 23-20. Now, this was a game that was just a head scratcher right from the get-go. It just seemed like the Bills were not into it right from the start, and this is coming after that Sunday night blowout, so you thought that the Bills would have had some pep in their step. Now, granted, they were missing some key players, so the inactives were Taron Johnson, Taylor Rapp, Khalil Shakir, Ed Oliver, and Austin Johnson. They also popped up on the injury list. So those five players were dealing with injuries. Will Clapp and Edfon Yolofosio were the other two scratches, so healthy scratches. So the Bills did have a lot of key injuries. Terrell Bernard was luckily able to come back, played great at that middle linebacker position, made a key interception in the second half as the defense really started to clamp down. But the Bills just dug themselves a huge hole right from the get-go as they were outscored 17-3 at the half. And really, it felt like it was a lot worse just because no one could do anything for the Bills offense. Josh Allen, now granted, okay, let's start here. Josh Allen did not have the best day by any means. He was 6 of 18 for 56 passing yards at the half. When you look at his complete stats, he finished 9 of 30 for 131 yards and a touchdown. 49 of those yards in that touchdown came to Keon Coleman, and that was really one of those changing plays in the game when the Bills finally started to get that momentum, and you really started to wonder if the Bills were actually back. But once again, this team's clock management comes back to bite them. So I don't want to bury the lead, and that's where we need to start because the Bills essentially coughed this one away. Sean McDermott, Joe Brady, the rest of the coaching staff, again, they get outcoached. It's game after game, year after year. We're seeing these same mistakes. And I tweeted this just a few minutes ago, and a lot of people are agreeing. So I said, I don't get how a coaching staff who preaches preparation, details, fundamentals, situational football, etc., can repeatedly make the same mistakes year after year that are literally the exact opposite of what they preach. Because, Sean McDermott is always talking about being detail-oriented, paying attention to those details, being prepared, putting the work in, grinding it out, respecting the process. But once again, time after time, he gets out-coached. And I don't get it because, again, as I said in that tweet, it's the exact opposite of what he tells his team, what he tells the media, what he tells the fans. And I think it just comes down to he cannot handle these big game moments. Now, let's take a look at that series. Because the Bills defense, as I said, they were coming back. They were playing well. And it was actually going to be 23-20 Houston, but the defense stepped up big time and they forced CJ Stroud to throw an incomplete pass, which was actually deemed as an intentional grounding. So that knocked them out of field goal range, giving the Bills the ball back with 32 seconds left. Now, they had the ball at the 3-yard line and just an abysmal series of play calls as Allen tried to go down the boundary with Coleman. Then he just lobbed up a prayer to Mac Hollins. And then there was a crosser over the middle to Curtis Samuel. Hey, he finally got targeted. Curtis Samuel finally did something, right? Except the pass went short. I think Allen got knocked into. Either way, just an ugly series. Now, I understand what the Bills are trying to do, right? Because you're trying to be aggressive. You have Josh Allen. You want to push the ball down the field, and you want to score and win this before overtime. Because if they were conservative, you would say, why is McDermott so conservative? You have Josh Allen, go win the game. So it's important that we look at both sides here. But the main thing was you cannot give the Texans the ball back there. If you have the ball with 32 seconds left, you need to run enough clock. Now, granted, the Texans had their timeouts, so you need to run enough clock, make them use their timeouts, and try to matriculate your way down the field. And you know what? If you can't get the field goal, so be it. Take it to overtime. But you can't just keep backing yourself up to the point where Sam Martin almost committed a safety because his foot was on the back line. And then you give the ball back to the Texans, and Ka'imi Fairburn has a boot for a leg, and he was money from 59 yards. That is like the exact opposite scenario that the Bills should have ran there. And just an ugly, ugly ending. So once again, this coaching staff gets outcoached, and clock management, the challenge issues. There was one earlier in the game with Dalton Kincaid, whether the Bills should have challenged it or not. They elected not to. Now, I will say that the Bills did hire John Perry, a former NFL referee and rules analyst, to help McDermott in those situations. So maybe he was in his ear saying, don't challenge it because you're probably not going to win it. So it's important that we remember that as well. But overall, just again, that we are sitting here on a Sunday night going into Monday morning, just wondering why the Bills can never win in these big moments and why Sean McDermott and his staff continually get outcoached. But look, there's another big problem that we have to talk about here, and that is the wide receivers' inability to create separation and get open. Now, look at this box score here. That is just putrid. So Keon Coleman led the way with that 49-yard touchdown reception, but look at that. He only had one reception on 5 targets. Dalton Kincaid is not playing like a first-round pick right now. 6 targets, 2 receptions, 34 yards. Mac Hollins? Okay, I am sick of seeing Mac Hollins run these deep routes. You signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling for a reason. He was supposed to be that speedster to take the lid off the defense, but he's been invisible. 3 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards for MVS. Mac Hollins, 6 targets, 2 catches for 27 yards. James Cook, I liked what he did. He had 20 rushes for 82 yards, added 17 in the air. Ray Davis had 1 catch for 4 yards. But then look at Curtis Samuel. I've been on Curtis Samuel for the past week, and I was more on Joe Brady, but I'm wondering if this is a Curtis Samuel thing now, because 4 targets, 1 catch, 0 yards. Maybe he's just not that good. Maybe he can't run these routes. And I still think that Brady can use him a little bit better. Maybe you can run some better routes with him, maybe some more crossers or slants or dig routes, just something to get him going. But you can't keep throwing it to him behind the line of scrimmage and expecting these screen passes to work out when they can't run them offensively. And it looked like the Bills couldn't defend them defensively either, at least in the first half. I know they did tighten up, but the screen passes on both sides of the ball are really hampering the Bills right now. This is a big question and a big talking point when you look at this box score again. And it's just crazy to think about that the Bills wide receivers had a combined stat line of 4 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. And if you take away Keon Coleman's 49-yard touchdown catch, you're looking at 3 catches for 27 yards and 0 touchdowns. And that was all because of Mac Hollins. And the extra reception came from Curtis Samuel for 0 yards, a big fat donut. So the Bills have to figure this out, because this is, as I said, ugly, putrid, abysmal. No one's getting open. I can't wait to see some different angles. Maybe we can get a look at the all 22, because again, as much as Josh Allen was not on his A game today, if you saw some of those plays, there was just no one open. He had nowhere to go because there's that lack of separation. You don't have that one guy like a Devontae Adams or Amari Cooper to just kind of take over in those games and say, look, Josh, I'm going to be open. Give me the ball. And I know, we just moved on from that from Stephon Diggs, and we were just buying into this approach about everyone eats, right? Like, we were buying in that Jacksonville game was great. The Bills were 3-0. Well, now I think defenses have figured out how to defend it, and now the Bills have to counter it. Now Joe Brady has to take that next step as the offensive coordinator and say, okay, defenses are starting to figure out our little motto here about everybody eats, because now everyone is starving. No one's eating. They're barely even snacking anymore. So the Bills fall to 3-2, and now they have a huge game. Should I say, is this a must-win? A must-win game on Monday Night Football, going to New York, New Jersey, to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, who fell to 2-3, playing in London today. The Vikings are 5-0. I mean, that's crazy. But look, I'll finish this way. You win next week, you're 4-2. You're hosting the Tennessee Titans in Week 7 with the very good possibility of moving to 5-2. So the season is very young. It's very early. It's far from over. But the Bills have a lot of problems that they need to figure out. And I think the big problem is trying to figure out this wide receiver room. I didn't even mention Dawson Knox. Fat contract. And was he even in that box score? Let me go back to it. So he didn't even have a target today, just completely invisible. I'll have to go back and see the snap count when they come out. I don't think there was an injury or anything, but Dawson Knox was once again invisible. And if you're paying him, the original contract was $52 million. Now they did shave that down. Knox took off some money himself. So it's not as much, but here's the thing. You paid Dawson Knox. You re-signed him. You signed Curtis Samuel. 3 years, $24 million. That's an AAV of $8 million per year. And now what's Joe Brady's fault or Curtis Samuel's fault? Either way, it's not working. So that just looks like an organizational failure when you sign these guys. Even MVS, I know it's a smaller contract, but these guys who have been put in place as Josh's weapons are not coming through for him. And that's why you see that ugly stat line of 9-30 for 131 yards and a touchdown. So this week should be fun from a content standpoint, because we're going to have multiple conversations about if and when the Bills need to trade for a wide receiver, if Devontae Adams needs to be a Buffalo Bill, if Amari Cooper should get traded, if there's another wide receiver out there that maybe could fit this scheme for the Bills, because again, they need something to happen here. And the other point that I've been making throughout this little segment here is that they have to figure out this coaching problem. I mean, I don't know how you figure it out. I'm not anywhere near saying that Sean McDermott needs to get fired. Maybe after the season, we're going to have some different conversations. I really don't even think he's on the hot seat, so we don't even need to talk about it. It's just you have to be able to overcome those situations. That is a liability of Sean McDermott. That is not one of his strong suits. So maybe it is someone like a John Perry or someone else who can be in his ear to help him in these moments, because we know he kind of is who he is at this point. So you just have to hope that, I guess, you don't put yourself in those situations where it's going to come down to the final possession. So maybe if you get those wide receivers involved, maybe if you can do a little bit more on offense, you don't have to have it come down to Sean McDermott's boneheaded decisions at the end. So thank you for following along with another edition of Cuse's Corner. I'll be back next week, hopefully talking about a win, but make sure you subscribe to my channel at Kevin_Syracuse. Follow me on Twitter, and of course, follow Built in Buffalo on all of our platforms.